A few years ago, I moved to a country I had never been to before. I didn't speak the language. I didn't know anyone there. There was no job. There were no clients there waiting for me. Mm, I had no friends there, and I moved anyway. Now, people around me thought that I was a little crazy. Others were worried about me and wondered how I would um, make it there on my own. You see, Singaporeans don't move to a place like Portugal, where I've moved to. Our country is hyper developed, modern, new, fast paced. It is the country that people from outside of Singapore want to move to. Yet I was leaving, and I was leaving on my own and alone. There are probably, I think the last I checked, there was about 100 Singaporeans or less living in Portugal. Now, Portugal is the extreme opposite in almost every way from Singapore. Now, why and how did I decide to do it? I was living a really comfortable life in Singapore, living really well. I had strong network of clients, friends. I lived in a wonderful apartment in Singapore as well, and in a really good neighborhood. The thing is, I had always, I think since, I don't know, I was 11, 12 years old, wanted to move and uh, live abroad. As wonderful as Singapore was and is, it had never felt like home to me somehow. Yeah, I grew up there, my family is all from there, but it just didn't feel right to me ever since I was a young girl. Now, fast forward to just a few years ago, it happened just before I turned 40, and I really, I knew it was time to move, and things around me had all kind of fallen into place finally for me to move. There were a few countries that I had considered. There were a few places where I had acquaintances. I knew a few people. I was familiar with the country. But in the end, what brought me to Portugal was intuition. It was an intuitive decision. Now, it wasn't on my radar at all. I'm an avid traveler. I've been to so many places, but somehow I just had never been to Portugal before. And I never really thought about visiting it either. Okay, it wasn't at the top of my list. I don't know if it even was on my list at all. And yeah, so I'd been planning to go to another country. I was kind of researching, checking it out, asking around, finding out, what the requirements were, how to apply for visas, and so on. And it seemed at the time, the place that I wanted to move to, the doors the doors were kind of closing, and I recognized that it just without even applying, I'd already heard that things were changing in the visa process, that they were not as encouraging to foreigners coming in, and a couple of months later, There was also a huge natural disaster that happened there, and so I didn't totally give up on that place. However, I decided to be really open and look around. Um, to begin with, I was only kind of planning or thinking about a place that I could move to just for a year or two to start, before I kind of made my next move or planned my next move. Okay. And so it was really important. I didn't put too much pressure on myself. It wasn't like, well, I have to find a forever place, you know. It was more a let's see, and let's see how I like whatever place that I go to next, and we'll see what happens from there, right? Now, I am, I like plans. So I like plans. I like being really organized, and I'm very practical about, how I live my life and how I go about things. But some years ago, I did a solo trip, a solo travel trip for more than half a year. And it was then that I realized I really had to let go of all of this control and all of this planning, because uh, things, we can plan and we can plan, and things really go the way that we plan anyway, right? And what happened on that trip was that, you know, there was a lot of space and time because I let go of too much planning and control. There was a lot of space and time for surprises, for life to just happen. And it was an amazing and wonderful discovery process for me. And I realized that it was truly a metaphor for life, right? And since then, so that was some years ago, but since then I had, you know, actively let go of holding on too tightly to plans, and being more open and prepared for things to change and to kind of just adapt as as I go along. And so with the move, I decided to be really open about it. I kind of, kept an eye out for what other places that I could move to or spend time in. And a really trusted friend of mine, someone who's also really intuitive, simply suggested to me Portugal. And she's like, "Have you thought about that?" You know, and I had heard that there are quite a lot of people who were interested in moving there at the time, not from Singapore, but everywhere else. People wanted to move to Portugal. It was kind of like a hot place to move to, right? And for that reason, I was a bit like, I don't know, because I don't like kind of moving in the direction, or moving towards, where everyone is going and what everyone else is doing. I don't like jumping on the bandwagon. But I thought, okay, I'll, keep that in mind, and, just consider being open, and let's see. Okay. And a couple of weeks or months later, another friend who I also trust and know to be highly intuitive, right? And who doesn't know the first friend at all, right? Suggested Portugal again. Okay. And this kind of, because it was the second time that it came up, and I've learned in my life to pay attention to the signs, to pay attention that things that spontaneously and curiously come up more than once, okay, even if I'm not interested in it, I will check it out. And so when I heard this suggestion from the second friend, I was like, oh, maybe I should really just check this out and consider it. Okay. And so I did my research, and it seemed quite viable. I ended up applying, and one thing led to another, as they say, and 3 months later, I found myself in Portugal. Now, at the time, I decided not to visit before I arrived. I did do extensive research, though, I have to say, and I had packed up everything. I gave up the lease on my apartment. I got rid of a lot of junk and stuff, sold it off, gave it away, and yeah, and I moved. A few years have passed since then, and I know now for sure that I was meant to come here. I was meant to be here. And I'm really glad that I trusted myself, my intuition enough to take that step. And look, it is, of course, risky. Um, but I really thought to myself at the time, I mean, look, if it doesn't work out, I can go home. I can go back to Singapore. Uh, yes, while it never felt like home here, I could go back, right? I had friends there, I'm familiar with the place, and so it didn't really matter so much, right? Of course, that wasn't my hope, and of course, I was optimistic and positive about the future. Mm, there was always that, right? Another thing that I told myself to help myself through my fears is that it I was not looking for a forever place. If it ended up being a forever place, great. But if it was a place just to be for a year or 2 years or a few years, or even a few months, that would be fine too, right? So that really took a lot of pressure off me as well, for it to make, for me to make it work, right? And I was really open, curious to see what was in store. And it from the moment that I made the decision to move, things really flowed. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't challenges. Nobody likes moving, much less moving to another country, but just moving house, just packing things up, clearing stuff. It's like, oh God, right? One of the most, I think, the most stressful life event. Mm, and of course, there was all of this administrative stuff to get through, all the red tape and the bureaucracy, and all of this stuff in uh, Portugal, especially. Like, it's notorious for being very difficult and a lengthy process and so on. Right? And sometimes, there's just stuff to do, adulting to do, which is never fun. But, all in all, it went smoothly. My application went smoothly. My renewal a few years later went smoothly, and relatively quicker than what a lot of other people, complain about and feel challenged by, right? So, of course, it wasn't perfect, but the research helped, the positive attitude helped, just being ready to adapt. Yeah, and yeah, I know now that I, was meant to come here. I still live very well and very comfortably. I've made friends here. I, met my partner here, and it's just been overall really beautiful experience. And so, if you are planning a big move, and it might be a literal move to go abroad, or maybe just move to another city. Or you're planning a move that is not literal, like is not, moving house, but you just want to make a big move for yourself, right? Do something that kind of takes you out of your comfort zone, takes you out of what has always been safe for you. Mm, If you feel, you know, called, and it is your, excuse me, your inner truth speaking to you, you don't need to wait to figure out everything, to see the outcomes in its entirety, to take a step, to take action, to make a move. The thing is, if you sit and wait, you'll never find out what happens next or what could happen. So follow your intuition. Trusting your intuition really means trusting yourself, knowing that whatever life may throw at you, you'll make it through. You'll adapt, you'll find help, you'll be provided that support somehow or other, right? So, I'm not saying take a step blindly, right? Do your research, do what you need to do, take that aligned action, okay? But don't wait until every single thing is foolproof, and completely in place and almost guaranteed. So there is an element of risk if you are really wanting to maximize and live your life to its fullest and to its fullest potential. There are going to be some risks that you're going to take in life. And really, there is nothing that we can't come back from. Okay? And, maybe you can't go back to the exact same thing, okay, if you want to reroute and take a detour, and things would change inevitably. But trust that whatever is ahead is better. Trust that even if you feel or think at some point that you've made a mistake, right? Focus on the growth. Focus on, why you even want to make a big move. Again, don't wait to figure everything out before you take a step. Each step that you take will reveal more. Okay, and intuitive decisions are never logical to begin with. Okay, it doesn't start out logical, may not make sense. That is the very nature of the word intuition and intuitive. Right? So don't expect it to make sense and be logical straight away. It will make sense later on though. Right? So, if you like this video, please share it with someone whom you think would benefit. You can subscribe. Anyway, I'm Desiree, and I have been practicing holistic wellness and therapy for now close to 17 years. I love what I do. I feel fulfilled and satisfied every day. I am living my purpose. And the people I work with are mostly women, and they are women who want to make an impact in the world. They want to live with purpose. They want to find their life purpose. Right? And I help them work through their blocks. I have an intuition training program as well. So if you want to know more, just check out all the links in the description.